So let's take a look at the state of the Patriots. They do have a young, promising quarterback in Mac Jones, who will enter his second season. They will get the 21st overall draft pick in the 2022 draft. They got about $2.5 million in cap space as it stands right now. How about these notable free agents? J.C. Jackson, Devin McCourty, Dante Hightower, and Jawan Bentley. This conundrum is where we begin the deep dive with Phil Perry and Tom Curran. Phil, what is the outlook right now, as you see it, for the Patriots, not just improving, but maybe improving quickly and getting back in that mix with the best of the AFC?
Well, I think it's going to be a challenge. Now, the one bright spot that they have, and it is a bright spot to me, is the development of Mac Jones. I think he'll make a real leap from year one to year two, not just physically, but also in terms of how he's understanding defenses and how he understands the Patriots offense and the confidence that he has in what he's able to do in the system. But they don't have all that much in terms of assets to be able to spend and lean upon this offseason for teams that are looking to get better immediately. They have sort of a standard complement of draft picks this year, first, second, third, fourth rounders, and not a lot of cap space. So there are going to be holes on this roster. There are players that are set to leave. And Tom, I'm just not sure how they fill all of those and still get better outside of that quarterback position.
Yeah, the Patriots have always been the whole is better than the sum of its parts. When you parse them out individually, there's not a lot of guys who you say, oh, that guy's a borderline all-pro. He's a perennial Pro Bowler. I think, though, that I feel as if they have a better core than you do, Trenni. I think Kyle Duggar's a good young player. Christian Barmore, Matt Judon's young enough to still consider a core guy. Mason, we can go around and around on all that. Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson. But the upshot to me is, they don't have players on either side of the ball that are dynamic enough to make an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator say, what are we going to do about this guy? Well, I don't know how we're going to limit him. And that's not the quarterback situation with the other teams. That's defensive guys and offensive guys on those other teams, whether it's Tre'Davious White or Frank Clark or Chris Jones or who's the other team? Tennessee. They have Justin Simmons, Kevin Byard. All those teams have, and I'm not even getting into the offense. The Patriots don't really have any of those defensive guys who you're going, oh, what are we going to do about this guy? They need to get more talent in here.
And I guess that's what I meant is that, for me, you want players that you can sort of build around, and a player that when an opposing team looks at it, whether it's offense or defense, Curran, they say, okay, that's the guy we got to key on. That's the guy we have to stop. But then you have other guys around him that can still produce. So that person almost has a dual role. I know we talked about this a ton on the show throughout the season about whether or not this is a rebuild or is it not a rebuild. Curran, I know that you think it is. So where is this team in the rebuild?
They're at the point now where they've got the frame up. They've got the finished carpentry. Finished carpentry. The rugs aren't down, but you're starting to do some finish. You've seen the house is taking shape. This is what it's going to be. Mac Jones is here. He's going to be your quarterback. You've got a running game that you're keying around. You have two tight ends. We'll see what Jonnu Smith turns into. Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers are going to be here. So, Phil, is that a fair assessment? I mean, I've built one house in my life. I didn't.
Look at you, humble brag. I would say this: they are not.
Never mind.
They are not a traditional rebuilding team, though, and that's where you and I disagree when we've spoken about this in the past. For traditional rebuilding teams, right? You've got a lot of money to play with. You have a lot of draft picks.
But they
generally
did have a lot of money to play with.
They did. That's why I say the rebuild happened in about a 3-month span back in 2021 between the middle of March and the middle of May. It was done at that point. The team was built. And I understand they're going to be improving with some of their younger players, and there's going to be plenty of holes to fill this offseason. But that's every team. They built last offseason, Tom, and they are one of the oldest teams in football, or they were going into last season. They were the 10th oldest team in the league. They were the second oldest defense in the league. That's not a rebuilding team.
That's why the rebuild
in terms of the definition
continues.
that I understand.
Okay, and that's why, by definition, the rebuild continues and you're into finished carpentry because now you see what you're going to do with Dante Hightower. Last year it was Patrick Chung. This year it might be Matt Slater. There's going to be some very difficult goodbyes, but that's part of the rebuild, those difficult goodbyes. Do we need this anymore? No? All right. I love this thing, but we got to go on from it.
Yeah, it's so I feel like I've got like 8 people talking to me at once, and now I've lost my train of thought.
I think we all just get lost in Curran's analogies, that's all.
Well, I mean, I get the house building. I guess what I'm looking for is a stronger foundation.
They need a dynamic player, Trenni. That's the bottom line. They don't have anybody to take your breath away. No Rob Gronkowski, no Julian Edelman, who grew into that. Dante Hightower and Chandler Jones, both first-round picks, were so good. Devin McCourty was a Pro Bowl player. I mean, the point that you made at the top about the draft, you're exactly right. Those should have been brought in, watered, fertilized, and now they're blooming.
I think you do have some players, though, on the roster who could get there. Right? I know you feel that way about Kyle Duggar, unless your opinions change there.
No,
I feel that way about Christian Barmore.
Yep.
I feel that way about Mac Jones. It's just a question of when does that leap happen? Does it happen year 1 to year 2 for those rookies that we all know had a pretty good year last year? And for the guys that are a little bit older than that, are they ready to step into those roles?
Well, guys, maybe we just have to look a little to the west, a little southwest, I guess, to Cincinnati for an example. Time now for the Ford Big Board. Built for America, built Ford proud. One young quarterback has turned things around very quickly. Joe Burrow went 2-7-1 in his rookie season while tossing 13 touchdowns to 5 picks. Of course, had that knee injury. In 2021, the second-year pro went 10-6 while passing for 34 touchdowns to just 14 interceptions and a QB rating over 108. So maybe this gives us a little bit of hope for Mac Jones. Let's bring in Tom Giles alongside Phil Perry. Can you look, Giles, at the Bengals and say, wow, maybe that can be the Patriots?
I think you do, because you look at, and I know Phil's going to talk about this too, about the style of quarterback that Joe Burrow is and the style of quarterback that Mac Jones appears to be as well. It's also the fact that you have this guy in his second year that improved his team win total by 6 games. And if you go back the year before that, they improved it by 8 games. So just a tremendous improvement from Joe Burrow. The difference is, as far as the rosters are concerned, because I think there's also a difference in the personalities of the quarterbacks, but you had the Bengals with the 5th overall pick last year because they had won 4 games the year before. So they were able to go out and get Jamar Chase with the 5th overall pick. This is where, Phil, when you talk about the Patriots and they're not your traditional rebuilding team, they don't have the 5th overall pick. They've got the 21st overall pick. That's obviously makes it more difficult for Bill Belichick.
Right, because the Bengals are very obviously rebuilding. But the reason I like looking at the Bengals and using it as a window into what the Patriots could be, I'm talking specifically about that position, that quarterback spot, because what Joe Burrow has done is fascinating to me. You guys remember it. We talked about it all leading up to the draft and through the draft. Can you win in today's NFL with a young pocket passer? The discussion was, well, that's going to be really hard because there's really 2 guys in the league that do it now, and it's Tom Brady and it's Drew Brees, and that's it. And good luck to any young player who's aspiring to be either of those 2 guys who are going to the Hall of Fame. Well, now there's another example. It's Joe Burrow, who's in his second year. He's a pocket passer. And I think he's a little bit better athlete than Mac Jones, especially in the pocket. Trenni, he's really good under pressure, or at least he has been this year. But he's not a dynamic athlete. He's not a running threat. He does not have a huge arm. He's a smart player. He's an accurate quarterback. And he's a confident guy. I think all of those 3 things are 3 things that Mac Jones brings to the table as well. So if you surround him with pieces, the way that the Bengals have in Cincinnati with their quarterback, Joe Burrow, I think you could get maybe not the exact same kind of leap, but I think you could get a pretty similar leap.
Giles, I can see you. You're like leaning forward.
It's just, well, when we say that Mac Jones is a confident quarterback, he is, but it's different. This is where I think they differ as players. Joe Burrow's got this moxie about him that he just decides that he's going to go out there and he's going to win the game. He feels like a killer to me. Mac Jones, he's more of an aw shucks, you know. I'm still
Giles,
trying to figure it out.
were you saying that about Joe Burrow last year? And if you were, was it just because he looked cool smoking a cigar after you won the national championship?
I mean, he looks so cool, though. You got to admit that,
yeah.
dude. He's got that swagger.
I mean, if you
to
just
him.
compared the 2 pictures of these guys smoking cigars side by side, I think we all know which quarterback we'd rather go with. But it comes down to more than that, right? And I agree. He looks
think that should be a new combine thing, though.
That should be a combine.
Every quarterback with a cigar in his mouth, and that's when you know if you got the guy or not.
And then you get a score, right? You get some kind of score for that, and then you base your evaluations off of that. I think last year, Trenni, you look at it, Mac Jones as a rookie compared to Joe Burrow as a rookie, better completion percentage, better yards per attempt figure, better quarterback rating.
To push back on Mac Jones's lack of moxie a little bit, just because he doesn't look cool smoking a cigar, and he might.
It's not just that.
A little bit of opie, but there's something his teammates like about him. Giles, he was able to get out of a guy. We'll use Jacoby Myers as the prime example here. He was able to get something out of him that we hadn't seen from other quarterbacks. We certainly didn't see from Cam Newton last year. And listen, I don't think it's all just lip service when they go to the podium and they talk about what a great leader this guy is and how they like playing behind him. Just because it's not over the top doesn't mean it's not fair.
Yeah, I compare it a little bit, though, to Joe Burrow more so than to like a veteran quarterback who just decides we're going to go out there, we're going to beat you, and I'm going to make the declaration. And it's just, they're different styles, but I just believe it a lot more when it's Joe Burrow talking.
The point to me, Trenni, is just I can envision it. I can see it happening with Joe Burrow. You know Mac Jones isn't going to be Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. You have a guy now who's succeeding at a very high level, who looks like he's going to be in the MVP conversation moving forward, and he's not all that different physically from the guy here in New England.